And last season, I lost a lot of money, a pretty good bit of money, man, because my hernias and I couldn't work right. I couldn't perform. So this season here, man, I want to see if I can't find me an assistant. A good assistant is someone that don't care get in the water, ain't worried about the alligators, ain't worried about the snakes, and do anything that I tell them and take the cussing that I do.
For years, people on the internet have been convinced that Shelby Stanga was dead. He isn't. The Swamp Man star vanished from television so suddenly that rumors exploded across social media. Fans claimed he had died in an accident, disappeared into the Louisiana wilderness, or suffered some tragedy the History Channel was hiding. But the truth was far stranger. So what really happened to Shelby Stanga? Join us as we uncover the remarkable story behind the man who disappeared from television but never truly disappeared at all.
Can you go through here?
I'm pretty sure if you make it.
Hold on.
Oh my God.
Hold on!
Oh!
The swamp was his everything. Shelby Stanga spent his childhood exploring the bayous and backwaters of Louisiana, learning the ecosystem from the inside in a way that no classroom could have taught him. The swamp was not a hobby or a weekend activity. It was the full environment of his existence. He knew which water was safe, which was not. He knew where the snakes were and how to avoid them, and, when avoidance was not possible, how to deal with them. He knew the trees, the currents, the specific spots where something interesting might be hiding under the surface. By age 11, he was already working. By 16, he was working for a dredging company, which is where he first developed the skill that would eventually put him on national television, pulling sinker cypress logs out of the Tangipahoa River. Sinker cypress is not a phrase that most people outside of Louisiana logging circles know, but it is genuinely one of the more remarkable resources connected to the history of that region. Between 1850 and 1944, the swamps around the Tangipahoa River and its surrounding creeks and bayous were milled extensively for their old-growth cypress trees. The timber was felled and floated down to Lake Pontchartrain, where it was used in home construction across New Orleans. Not every log made it. Hundreds of them sank during transport and were left at the bottom of the river, where the cold, dark, low-oxygen environment of the swamp floor preserved them perfectly for over a century. The cypress logs that sank in the 1980s are, when retrieved today, still structurally sound, deeply colored by decades of tannin absorption, and highly prized by woodworkers, builders, and collectors who understand what they are holding. Shelby Stanga spent over 37 years developing the expertise to find and retrieve these logs. He knew the river. He knew where the logs were. He knew how to get them out of water that most people would not voluntarily enter. And he was doing all of this before anybody with a television camera had ever seen his name. As a teenager, he was already rigging ropes, inner tubes, and small boats to haul up forgotten logs, diving into waters full of snakes and snapping turtles. His reputation along the Tangipahoa River as someone both brilliantly skilled and completely fearless was established long before the History Channel arrived. How exactly did a man who barely went to school and spent his life in a Louisiana swamp end up on national television? How Axemen found the Swamp Man. Axemen premiered on the History Channel on March 9, 2008. The show's original concept followed multiple logging crews operating in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Oregon, Washington, and Louisiana, documenting the physical dangers and financial pressures of commercial logging in genuinely extreme environments. The show was built around the idea that logging was one of the most dangerous professions in America, which is factually correct, and that the people who did it were a specific and fascinating kind of human being, which also turned out to be correct. Shelby appeared as a crew member in a 2006 episode of Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls before Axemen gave him his proper platform. When Axemen's producers came looking for a Louisiana logging personality, Shelby Stanga was not a difficult person to find if you asked the right people in the right swamps. He was already a known figure in the regional logging community. He was already the guy with the reputation for going into water that nobody else would enter to retrieve logs that nobody else could find. He joined Axemen in Season 3, which premiered in 2010, and remained on the show through Season 9 in 2016. His segment was immediately different from the Pacific Northwest logging crews because the environment was completely different. Where the other crews were dealing with mountainous terrain, massive timber, and industrial equipment, Shelby was working alone in a Louisiana swamp with a small boat, ropes, and a chainsaw, pulling logs that had been underwater for 100 years. The audience responded to him immediately, and for a reason that is easy to understand once you see him on screen. Shelby Stanga is genuinely funny. Not in a self-conscious way, not in a way that is performing for the camera. He is funny in the specific way that people who have spent their entire lives in a particular environment develop humor that is rooted in that environment. His one-liners were quotable. His problem-solving was inventive in ways that drew descriptions like redneck engineering from people who meant it as the highest possible compliment. His thick Cajun accent and his absolute refusal to be impressed by anything that was not the swamp gave him a screen presence that the show had not had before he arrived. He referred to his wife Donna on camera as his little Jehovah's Witness wife, a detail that became one of the more memorable casual revelations in the show's history. He treated every dangerous situation with the casualness of someone who had been dealing with dangerous situations for so long that they had stopped registering as particularly remarkable. Now here is where the story gets more interesting, because Shelby Stanga's television career did not end with Axemen. It launched something bigger. So what happened when the History Channel decided to give the Swamp Man his own show? The Legend of Shelby, the Swamp Man. The Legend of Shelby the Swamp Man premiered on the History Channel on August 6, 2013, while Shelby was still appearing on Axemen. The spin-off ran for 2 seasons and 10 regular episodes, plus 2 specials, concluding on April 26, 2015. The special episodes included Shelby's Greatest Hits Volume 1 and A Very Shelby Christmas, where Axemen emphasize the competitive and dangerous elements of logging, placing Shelby's Louisiana operation alongside the Pacific Northwest timber crews in a format built around comparing loads and dollars. The spin-off gave him room to be the full version of himself in his actual environment. Episodes followed his daily life in the Louisiana swamps, showcasing the eccentric projects that defined his existence, salvaging abandoned boats, crafting makeshift shelters, trading swamp finds with locals, solving problems with whatever materials happened to be available. His loyal dog Willie appeared regularly. His wife Donna made appearances. Friends and neighbors from the Ponchatoula area filled in the community around him. His salary from the Legend of Shelby the Swamp Man was reportedly around $70,000 per episode, though reports suggest that disputes over payments contributed to tensions around the show's end. The specific details of those disputes have never been fully aired publicly, which is consistent with how Shelby has handled his public persona generally. He tells you plenty about the swamp and almost nothing about the business side of things. In 2018, he returned briefly with a documentary called Return of Shelby, the Swamp Man, which gave fans a check-in with where he was and what he was doing after the regular series had concluded. The documentary was more modest in scope than the series, but confirmed what his fan base most wanted to know. He was still there, still in the swamp, still doing exactly what he had always been doing. And then, in the period between 2018 and 2025, Shelby Stanga largely went off the public grid. Not retired or ill, not arrested, despite what the internet decided. Just living in Louisiana, doing swamp things without a camera pointed at him. And, as tends to happen when beloved reality television personalities disappear from public view without explanation, the internet started filling the silence with increasingly dramatic stories. So what were people actually saying, and how much of it was true? The internet conviction. The ecosystem of rumor that built up around Shelby Stanga in the years after his television appearances slowed down is one of the more entertaining examples of what happens when a person with a loyal audience and a very low social media presence takes a step back from public life. The death rumors came first. Various websites and YouTube channels began circulating claims that Shelby had died in a swamp accident, that he had been injured on set during filming, that the injuries had been more serious than reported and had eventually led to his death. These claims were presented with confidence and without evidence. They spread because his Facebook page, which had last posted in 2018, looked like the social media of someone who was no longer around to update it. The reality star had been subject to controversy throughout his Axemen years when word got out that the injuries and dramatic moments shown on the show were scripted or staged to attract viewers. Shelby's apparent on-screen accidents became specific points of speculation, with some claiming the injuries were fake and others claiming they were real but more serious than the show had presented. Neither version was particularly satisfying, and the ambiguity fed the rumor cycle. The arrest was real, though. In 2014, while Axemen was still in production and Shelby was still appearing on the show, he got himself into the kind of trouble that only Shelby Stanga could get himself into. He entered a neighbor's private property, carrying his axe, and, after being confronted by the neighbor, proceeded to cut down a cypress tree that did not belong to him. The neighbor called the police. Shelby ended up in handcuffs with a mugshot that became immediately and widely shared on the internet. The charges related to trespassing and property damage. The cypress tree in question was not just any tree, but one protected under local regulations, which added a specific legal dimension to what might otherwise have been a straightforward neighbor dispute. The image of Shelby Stanga in a police mugshot, the same man who spent years on television navigating alligator-infested waters with a chainsaw and a rope, arrested for cutting down his neighbor's tree with exactly the kind of tool he always carried, is one of those reality television moments that is impossible to make up, and that tells you everything about who the person actually is. He genuinely loves cypress trees. He genuinely cannot always resist the opportunity to interact with one. And he genuinely did not fully appreciate the distinction between trees that were his to cut and trees that belonged to the man next door. He was released after the arrest, and the situation was resolved through the legal system without producing anything more dramatic than the mugshot itself. He continued on Axemen. He continued on with his spin-off. He continued being Shelby Stanga. So, with all of that established, here is the actual question that his fan base has been asking since the cameras went quiet. Where is he right now, and what does his daily life actually look like in 2025 and 2026? Where Shelby Stanga is right now. Despite occasional rumors, Shelby Stanga is very much alive as of 2025 and 2026. He is 65 years old. He continues living in Ponchatoula, Louisiana, with his wife Donna on the 3.5-acre property along a riverbank that opens into a scenic lake that he has owned and lived on throughout his television years and afterward. He has not moved to a different state. He has not retired to a beach house. He is in the same swamp, doing the same work, living the same life. The Louisiana Life magazine profile of him during his Axemen years described a man who preferred to sleep in a sleeping bag and hammock next to a boat launch on the Tangipahoa River, rather than in a conventional house. That preference reflected something genuine about how Shelby Stanga relates to the concept of shelter. For someone who spent his childhood and adolescence and entire adult life in and around the swamp, the idea of sleeping indoors when sleeping outdoors is available is genuinely not a hardship. It is a preference. His Facebook page, which had gone quiet in 2018, re-emerged in April 2025 through a YouTube collaboration with Paul Ricalde, known online as Paul Stoolbox, in a video that gave fans their first real public update on where he was and what he was doing. The collaboration confirmed what his absence from social media had never disproven. He was still in Louisiana, still logging, still entirely himself. He continues to pull sinker cypress from the swamps of Louisiana, which is not just a hobby or a nostalgic connection to his past, but a genuine livelihood that has been his primary source of income for decades before and after television. The market for sinker cypress has not disappeared. The logs that have been preserved at the bottom of Louisiana rivers for a century are still there and are still valuable to the people who know what to do with them. Shelby Stanga still knows where they are and how to get them. His net worth is estimated at between $400,000 and $2 million, depending on which source you consult, with the range reflecting different assessments of how his television earnings combined with his ongoing logging income add up over time. The lower estimate reflects his lifestyle choices, which have never been oriented toward accumulating visible wealth. The higher estimate reflects the fact that a man who was earning significant television money for several years and has almost no visible consumer spending habits has had somewhere for that money to go. He has almost no social media presence in any active sense. He does not have an Instagram account with regular posts. He does not have a Twitter presence. His Facebook page is essentially inactive. He has not started a YouTube channel or a podcast. He has not appeared on any major talk shows or celebrity platforms since return of Shelby, the Swamp Man, in 2018. For someone who was on national television for several years and built a genuine fan following, the level of his retreat from public platforms is genuinely remarkable. But here is the thing about that silence that the internet keeps misreading as something ominous. Shelby Stanga was not a person who craved public attention before the cameras arrived. He was not someone who had been waiting for his television opportunity and who treated fame as the destination rather than a byproduct of doing what he already did. He was a swamp logger who got famous because someone pointed a camera at him while he was doing something fascinating in a place most people had never seen. When the cameras stopped, he went back to the thing, because the thing was always the point. So, if Shelby is presently off the radar, doing things that brought the attention of the camera in the first place, how about the cast members that contributed to the magic? The X-Men cast members who did not make. The context for fully understanding what happened to Shelby Stanga after X-Men includes the stories of the cast members who did not get to have the quiet, private, still alive in the swamp outcome that Shelby has had. Because X-Men was a genuinely dangerous show about genuinely dangerous work. And not everyone from the cast is still here. Jimmy Smith, a founding cast member of X-Men, died in 2012 after a battle with cancer. He had been one of the show's original logging crew members. Gabe Rygaard, who appeared on the show operating a family logging business in the Pacific Northwest, died in a road accident in 2013. He was on the phone while driving when his truck drifted off the road. He was 56 years old. The Rygaard logging operation that had been central to multiple seasons of the show was deeply shaken by his loss, and his family continued operating the business in the years that followed. William Bart Colantuono, another X-Men cast member, died when a helicopter crashed during the show's production. His death was the kind of on-production tragedy that tends to prompt serious conversations about the safety practices of reality television, conversations that the industry has not always handled as well as the families of those who died deserved. Van Huffman was found dead in Alaska's wilderness and was the subject of X-Men Season 4's third episode, which documented the search for his body by the Paypak Alaska crew in an episode called At Paypak. These deaths are part of the actual story of what X-Men was, because the show was documenting genuinely dangerous work done by real people who were not protected from the consequences of that danger by the fact that cameras were present. The logging industry in America has consistently ranked among the most dangerous occupations in the country by fatality rate per 100,000 workers. The people on X-Men were not performing danger. They were living inside it. Shelby Stanga's survival through multiple seasons of physically dangerous swamp work, followed by a quiet retreat into the same swamp for a private life, is not a boring outcome when you put it next to what happened to some of his fellow cast members. It is the kind of outcome that deserves a certain amount of quiet respect. Did you watch Shelby on X-Men or The Legend of Shelby the Swamp Man? What was your favorite Shelby moment, and do you think he should return to television one more time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.